Public Safety Committee meeting on February the 20th. Counselor Watney.
Here.
Counselor Wolverton.
Here.
Counselor Jones.
Here.
Counselor Nelms.
She's not here.
And Counselor Harden.
Here.
Nelms is absent, but you have a quorum of 4 people.
All right, so seeing a quorum at this time, I'll entertain a motion to dismiss the reading and approve of the minutes from the Public Safety Committee meeting February 6th. Councilor Wolverton, second by Councilor Harden. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 4-0. All right, there's no items under old business, so moving on to new business, 050223, request for discussion of changes to the traffic calming installation on Morris Boulevard. Councilor Sims. So, I've seen quite a bit of email traffic on this today. A lot of it later in the day, so I haven't been able to read all of it. So do you want to give us a rundown of what we're talking about?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Bolton. Brian, if you would first just go to the map that references kind of the 1 and the 2. Okay, so this is some traffic changes or roadway changes that were made back in earlier 2022 as a result of an ordinance to make changes to the right-of-way. And basically half of the improvements have been made at this time, which was what we're calling phase 1, which is boxed in around the triangle of Sterrett and Morris. And then box 2 are the second phase of those changes. So just for the sake of referencing, I wanted to clarify that up front. If we say phase 1 and phase 2, that's what we're talking about. So this was initially done in response to some concerns that were expressed through the Speak to Us Homewood portal. We had some discussions and follow-up about options to slow down traffic because we did initially conduct a traffic study, and it noted that the 85th percentile was more than 5 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, which resulted in follow-up. And then when we had a discussion about that resulted in looking at something along the corridor as opposed to where the complaint was specifically originally registered. So that resulted in basically 2 aspects of that. Even though the initial complaint originated closer to what's referenced as phase 2, it was the phase 1 improvements that were installed first in late 2022. And since that installation, we've received quite a bit of feedback from residents about concerns about that design and some follow-up, I guess, negative impacts or dangers that have resulted. So speaking about phase 2 specifically first, those again include some additional striping and some bulb outs. Those have not been installed yet. So this is really coming back to you in recognition of the fact that phase 2 has been paused. So we've done that informally and just basically wanted to make the Public Safety Committee aware of that for consideration of possibly canceling phase 2 based on feedback that you may hear from residents or that you've seen from residents via email. And then for phase 1, there's also a desire to reconsider the design of it or possible removal altogether. And what I wanted to do today is basically reintroduce the item for discussion to make you aware of basically what we're hearing and also provide an update on some of the data. We did ask for data post-installation, and Kale and Randy collected that data. Obviously, Kale's not here today, so he can't really present on that, but I will tell you that the pre and post data shows that for the eastbound traffic on Morris, that traffic did slow down. There's also there's a lower prevalence of like larger vehicles. There's more passenger vehicles. There's less utility and vehicles and trucks, which makes sense if you see the installation because it's really hard for those vehicles to go through that installation. But basically, eastbound wise, it did bring the traffic speed of the 85th percentile below 30 miles per hour. So it is less than the 5 miles per hour ever posted, which was the original concern. Westbound, there's been less of an impact. But again, I've provided those pre and post traffic studies via email. Happy to go through that further in conversation as we move forward. But today's intent is really to present this item for further discussion so we can look at alternatives. And so I have no intent to try to move quickly on this item this week. Intend that if the committee's willing to carry this over and to continue to discuss it. But that's basically what I wanted to bring to light and have discussion about. There are a number of residents on the street who are also here this evening who may have additional feedback, but I have shared a lot of the comments already, which summarize the concerns, which include the narrowness of the lanes, the concerns about the stop sign that was installed on Morris further out, or I'm sorry, if you're on Sterrett eastbound, that red dot where the stop sign now is so far out on the road that a lot of traffic actually go through to the right if there's not a car parked there. The resident there monitors that a lot and says that it's a very common occurrence. Called police about enforcement of that, but police cannot always be there, obviously. And then another just general concern that people have expressed is the loss of on-street parking as a result of this installation. So I just want to be transparent, share all that. A lot of this was, again, based on something we were trying to do to slow down traffic, but obviously has had some unintended consequences in regards to the aesthetics and loss of parking and possible other dangers.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Sims. Councilor Davis.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's one of those things when you look at it, it seems like it might work, but once the minute it was put in, it was obvious that it was not a workable solution. So my view is we do not move forward with phase 2, and we take out phase 1 and go back to the drawing board, because it's not working at all the way that it was designed to work. And if anyone has hopefully everybody on the council has driven through there and understood what we're talking about. I mean, I've seen near accidents right there at that intersection because people don't know which way they're going and they're getting cut off. And so it's but the overall, we were trying to slow down traffic with the bulb outs and things like that, but there's too much of on-street parking that we lose, and we've got on-street parking all the way through. So those are my thoughts. Is that we need to rescind ordinance 2833 and then also resolution 2257. Those were the two that we had passed in relation to this intersection. But we've gotten a lot of feedback. Most of the feedback is that phase 1, it needs to come out. It just it's not workable, and we need to come up with something else. And then the other overarching is phase 2 does not need to proceed. And then we have a resident here who's like right at that intersection, and we lose all the parking in front of his house. So the residents are, if you're open to them having.
Yeah, absolutely. So I ran into a couple of folks in the hallway that were here to speak about this. Prior to going to residents, are there any other comments from the committee? Questions?
Did we hire a third party to design this?
This was designed by Kimley Horn, I believe. Yeah, Clark Bailey.
So
I just don't remember.
I guess my only question, I was talking to Mr. Sims about it, was just, some of those stop signs that are, obviously 8 to 10 feet off the curb. Is it not possible to at least shift those inward closer to the curb so that you can't go around them and have that part of the?
It's really not
It's not the bulk of the issue. I guess I'm just wondering, is anything that was done helpful in any way salvageable for, moving forward?
Nick said it slowed
Rather than
traffic.
rescinding everything, because I did hear, that the traffic studies have been positively impacted. But I don't know, I don't know where they put the counters or,
I mean, that stop sign up there as you
It's just
turn
in the
it
middle of the road.
east and onto Morris.
It's in the middle
that's
of the
inherently
road.
missed.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is
I
it
mean,
possible to shift that?
And the Wagstaff live.
That's
right
the
there.
old one.
Yeah,
It looks
that's
like,
who I
yeah.
heard from originally. At first, when it first went
I mean,
in,
they
I heard
can't
from
even
Judy.
get out of their driveway.
Yes, is that the location, Mr. Jones, that you were mentioning where unless that car is parked right there, but they
Yeah,
cut through?
yeah, so people are cutting
See
to the
that.
right side of that,
Yeah.
of
Oh,
that
yeah.
stop sign.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just very unworkable. It looked good on paper, but in practice and watching people come through there, it just is not workable.
I mean, the first time I went through it, it's
Awkward.
not even easy to understand.
No.
I
clear
remember
what you're
I went
supposed
through
to
it.
Yeah, it is not
Awkward.
clear what you're supposed to do, and I'm pretty good with traffic circles, but when I got up to it, I was like, I don't really understand what this is supposed to be.
We should have drug that traffic engineer back in here to defend his design. Okay, so just, I assume everybody's here to talk about this item, so if you're not, it's fine. Just hop up, feel free to sign in, you can just give us your address, and then, you know, all we ask is, you know, someone has already referenced something that you want to speak about, just so we can keep the committees moving along, because there are people more behind this one, just to use some brevity, but please be sure and
If
get
y'all
out
know you want
what
to talk,
what you
I'll
want
pass this
to
around.
communicate to
I
us.
really want to hear That's what I was saying.
So I'm Houston Brown. I'm at 602 Morris Boulevard, so I'm just beyond the car that's parked there now. And so, I mean, let me say this first and foremost, like, we are all about traffic controlling measures. We don't want anybody to be hurt. I mean, there was obviously been an issue with speed on that street for a while. But we are not really satisfied with what has been installed and have seen a lot of the issues you guys are talking about. So, I'll just say, you know, that we do see numerous people run through, even if the car's parked there, there's still room for a car to get through there. And so they'll still go through that intersection. And then if there are two cars, so if there's a car, so if someone's coming into the intersection, they never kind of follow the yellow line. They kind of go in at an angle. And so then it's impossible for somebody to turn. So there's not enough room for someone to turn at that point. So my only other suggestion would be is like, hey, I know we did all this work slowing people going towards Broadway, but we didn't do anything, well, I'm sorry, going towards Broadway from this direction. But the majority of the people that are really gaining speed are coming from Morris down, and they don't have anything that prevents them from just, nothing forces them to check up at all. So those are the guys that are still gaining speed. Then anyone from Broadway coming, I guess that would be west, there's nothing there either. So, you know, so you still have those people at high rate of speed coming from the Broadway side.
Is speed humps a better answer? I know we don't always like that.
John, how long have you said?
I was like,
I knew we didn't like those.
Chairman Walton?
Yes.
And I want to kind of reference a couple things. One, what Houston referenced, and one, what Councilor Harden referenced. So first of all, as far as this, you know, the traffic coming from, you know, down Morris and then through to Broadway, you know, obviously there's another phase of this that would have addressed some of that as well, hopefully, you know, in theory. But this did start with, again, a concern that was more centered around Edgeland Place in Morris, with a potential solution of a three-way stop, with a potential solution of speed humps or some type of device, or at least a request for that. I shouldn't say a potential solution, but since then, you know, we were trying to look at the corridor, and that's kind of how we arrived at this, trying to look at a corridor versus specific places. So I want to reference that because that's how we ended up in a spot where we were designing something that impacted more than exactly one point. And then to your point, Councilor Harden, in discussion with some other municipalities, they've moved towards speed cushions, which allow some space in between for EMS to pass. And so when we're looking at this, including the entire removal, I mean, you know, that's why I want to y'all discuss and really think about it and carry it over, because, you know, we have multiple issues. We have the speeding and how we're going to address that in the future, and we have how do we reconcile, you know, this current installation.
And then my last comments would be just that, you know, if there is anything moving forward, just to please make especially the residents that are negatively affected by this, aware of it before it goes installed. So I mean, that was really our main issues, is we weren't really aware of what was going on before it got installed. And I guess the main thing I would look at there is, you know, if someone wants to go over their variance by an inch, then I get legal notification of that through the city, and I can come make a complaint. That 1 inch doesn't affect me, but this greatly affects my property, and we got nothing, before that was installed. So, that was it for me.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Meg Wallace. I live at 608 Morris Boulevard. So I'm at the property that runs on the kind of T section of Phase 2, where the bulb outs were gonna go in front of my property. And the same thing as Houston was saying, we didn't have any notification, didn't know that a request was put in May of 2021 for traffic calming measures. We saw the installation last fall, Phase 1, and then we discovered on Facebook in January of 2023 that the bulb outs were gonna go in front of our house with the reflective pavement markers. So we reached out to Nick and Walter and Kale, and they've been really great working with us, just expressing that we really were not pleased with that application for Phase 2, which we're grateful that looks like it's being paused. Our big concern going forward is there's been discussion about possibly putting a 3-way stop at Morris and Edgeland Place, which is right in front of our property, which the stop sign would go in the very center of our lot and would mean we'd have 0 street parking. So we'd be dealing with the same problem that Houston and all the families at the Triangle are now dealing with, where they don't have any street parking. We would lose all of our street parking. And we have 5 drivers, 5 cars, just with our immediate family, in addition to guests and other family coming. So I just want to say I know that was considered after the initial study in 2021, and that based on that study that y'all decided not to do a 3-way stop at that intersection. And I would just really like I would just like to ask you please not to do a 3-way stop at Morris and Edgeland Place.
Thank you, Ms. Wells.
I checked with Kale too, if we, any type of stop sign, you cannot park 30 feet
Right.
from the stop sign, so really that car right there is in violation of.
Let's go get it towed.
Right.
That's not my
I know.
I mean, is it really?
I know that's not used.
That card. All right. Is there anybody else that would like to speak about this item?
I'm Gina Watts. I'm at 401 Edgeland Place. So I've been in Homewood for about 28 years. So my question is, why was the yield sign taken away from what we had before? I don't know, your houses, did y'all have problems with, you didn't like the yield?
Oh, no, we didn't, no, we were there when the yield sign was there, and,
Uh-huh.
I mean.
Was
really-
it okay?
Yeah, when basically people just yielded that stop sign
Right.
anyway,
So they kind of, was it, so I don't understand why they changed all this, put the stop sign like in the road, because there is problems with traffic, which I think everybody knows that by now. But we did have the yield, and then everybody had parking on the road by your houses. So was there an issue why we came to this? To want to put a stop sign?
According to the study, not many people adhere to the yield sign, just like that, not adhering to the stop sign. You can do a lot of things, but it comes back to the people driving.
Right.
But a lot of the people there at the yield sign, because I had 2 garbage guys about to get run over at that yield sign because nobody's checking up at that yield sign.
So has there, like for doing the studies, has there been any accidents by the yield sign? Of course we don't want any kids being hit. I mean, that's the main concern, is children in the neighborhood. I know there's stop signs like on Starrett, like every 100 feet. Stop, 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 all the way down there. I know they did that to slow down traffic because people will take the back side over here to come out this way. So, we have a stop sign on Edgeland and Forest. We have a stop sign there because people come flying down the hill. But the stop sign there is awful. And I was just wondering why they just didn't stick with the yield, besides you're saying people are complaining about no one's yielding at the yield sign. Is that correct?
Thinking back, go ahead. Yeah, I think what drove that, decision to go toward the stop sign was the data was indicating the yield sign was not being utilized or adhered to, so due to the speed of the traffic on the street. So that's basically how the stop sign came into play, thinking that would drive the behavior we were looking before, which was to slow traffic down by stopping and then making the turn.
Gotcha. Because I know that where the sign is and the houses are right there, people are still parking there, which, I mean, their houses are there.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
and parking is a good thing on the street.
Right.
You know, some people like it, some people don't, but it does help slow the traffic down.
Okay. I just vote back back to the yield sign, but that's.
Can I just add, I mean, the stop sign was in the yard it's been there in the yard for 15 plus years. The yield sign went away over 15 years ago and went to a stop sign that would be just to the right of the car. And then this is new, so there has been a stop sign.
Stop sign, but yeah.
And hey, one second, Brian, if when you head towards that way, it changes, it goes
So
back
that's
to the
the
way.
original.
Did
Yeah,
you notice
that's-
that? So that's where
That's
the way.
what- right.
That's what it
that's-
was before.
And watch, I was showing you earlier.
Yeah.
About this way.
There's no stop sign there, they're
Right,
going
so
that
it
way,
shows
but.
the old-
Yeah.
So what was those pictures while ago, those other stop signs over here?
So
Is that the
Google
study?
ran their car through, the
They only
car
went one
only made
direction.
it to the top of the triangle or that far
Okay.
and then turned left, didn't go all the way through.
Okay.
Which is a common
So
That's
decision of most traffic these days.
Am I correct in what I thought was that Morris was where all the traffic was speeding mostly?
From the,
Versus Sterrett.
you
from
guys
the
correct me if
original.
I'm wrong, but the original traffic survey we did showed that we had the excess of speeding was on Morris, not Sterrett.
602 Morris, that's
602
correct.
Morris. Okay.
And I'll mention one thing that came to mind as I was thinking about this, and it goes back to the mayor and I worked on this. Remember when we were talking about the overall traffic, like where we want traffic to go?
Yeah.
And you remember when we talked about the corner of Morris and Broadway? And I don't know if you remember this, but Greg Cobb came and he said, okay, if you put that three-way stop there, people are going to stop there and they're gonna think, okay, I need to get over to Palisades. They're gonna peel off, they're gonna take a right. Rather than the way it was, where you just go down Broadway and go down to Carr and then take a right, by Gianmarco. So that's where we really want cars to flow with a larger roadway. But I thought, well, what if we eliminated took out a three-way stop at Broadway, and that would lessen the amount of traffic that's within the neighborhood there. Just a thought, because I tried to get Cale to give me numbers, but he couldn't come up with numbers as to what it was before we put the three-way stop and then what it was afterwards, so. I know, that's why I told you to marinate them.
That's gonna take some marination, because I feel like you're gonna get a whole lot of speed up if you stop at South Forest and you don't have to stop again until you get to.
But stop signs are not are not to slow down traffic. I mean, they were never designed for that, and that's why Cale didn't recommend adding a stop sign in this
Then we
configuration.
might as well take out those crosswalks y'all put in too, because.
Well, but when we first started, there wasn't a stop sign in Carr either.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
Yeah.
right.
There was no stop sign, there was no
So
stop
we
sign
had,
in Carr.
right.
Let's,
It was directly from
anyway,
Green Springs.
I don't wanna
Let's
take
circle
us off.
back to the
Yeah.
specific
Yeah,
issue
sorry.
at hand.
Just wanted to
No,
throw
no
that out.
worries, it's good feedback to have. So, is anyone else here to speak? Okay.
I'd like to, yes. My name is Jason Wallace. I live at 608 Morris.
You say Jason Wallace?
Jason Wallace, yes. I think I would just make a couple of points. One is under the current structural situation, emergency vehicles are having difficulty or could possibly have difficulty navigating the structures that are in place, the way they've been put in place, and that is that would also be a safety concern. And I think that as long as we're going to talk about speed as a safety concern, that's only one factor. It falls outside of the purview of the council, but the problem also is on the side of enforcement. You can put all the measures you can at your disposal on the street, and they're with Houston and others. In some ways, they're welcome because nobody wants anyone hurt because of a careless driver. But safety also involves other factors besides the vehicular speed. It's also going to involve the question of enforcement and also how the streets are being used or accessed by pedestrians or activity other than the vehicular activity. So whatever happens going forward, and I have to admit, I think there was poor communication with affected residents in this regard. And I have no ill feelings about that. Nick and I have talked about it, Walter and I have talked about it. This isn't it's not anything that's not amendable. But property was affected, aesthetics were affected, the ingress and egress of property was affected. And likewise with stop signs and such, you had the similar problem. So while safety is being addressed on one hand, on the other hand, the council has no ability to enforce the measures. All it can do is continue to put measures in place. And I would just ask that going forward that there be some reflection about what other factors besides speed might be involved with regard to issues of safety, such as how the streets are being used and what kind of usage the streets are for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. You're exactly right. It is hard to sit here and legislate a human being's behavior by ordinance, right? Because inevitably, statistically, you're going to have a group of people that are not going to comply regardless. So that is a challenge we face, but your points about communication are well put, so thank you for the feedback. Anybody else?
I live at 605 Morris. My name is Heidi Teeter, and I don't have anything significant to add other than the current installation isn't working as it was intended to, and so just to keep things short and sweet, I'm just here to support neighbors, and we've lost on-street parking, and I think it's kind of all the things that have been covered.
Thank you, Ms. Teeter.
I haven't.
Anybody else?
And
Mr. Jones.
I mean, I guess it's to me, it's clear we need to at least eliminate what we've done that's not effective. And then, I mean, we can have Kale come back, we can hire another engineer for some other ideas. I mean, we did whiteboard this a lot. Remember, Nick, I mean, we were
Spent a lot of
trying
time
to
in
come
committee
up
talking about it.
with some ideas. I mean, but let's involve residents this time. Let's figure out what we can do. But I feel like we need to go ahead and take care of rescinding what we've done, and then we can either keep this in committee, depending on what you want to do, Mr. President, or we can add another item on the agenda Monday, whatever is easier.
Well, yeah, I think we can do it either way. So if the committee wants to send out to rescinding of the current ordinances, and everyone's comfortable with what that leaves, because you're basically.
Yeah, that is one concern I have.
I guess, I don't know, I think we would need to, I would recommend that we carry it over at least once, because if you rescind the ordinances, you may be rescinding more than you're intending. It doesn't necessarily automatically go back to what it was. In other words, when you take out you may be taking out stop signs so that nothing is left. Right. If all you do is rescind it. So before we move forward with rescinding anything, I think we ought to at least make sure what's left after that, or if we need to, the two need to happen in concert with each other, where we're rescinding something and putting something else in. I'm not suggesting one's right or wrong, I just don't want to leave this intersection with nothing,
Or
with no rules.
Or inadvertently increase speed headed eastbound. Because
Correct.
It has had an effect. That's the only concern I have.
Well,
I'll defer to the committee, but we did, hang on one second.
Can the committee not get with Kale and
That's what I wanna
Kimley
ask.
Horn and
Kale.
get some of the neighbors?
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think you're at a point now, I mean, I agree, I mean, every
Kale's
one of them
input.
has the same thing, is get with Kimley Horn, have some of the neighbors be able to come and sit down and talk with them. Let Kimley Horn kind of go through what they derived and why they came to what they came to, and then let them hear from the neighbors and see what that can interact. In the meantime, like Alex said, I don't know that I know it's not working, but I think for the next few weeks, we live with it until we get something better in place that.
I don't want to move so quickly that we make it worse than it already is.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, but put it the way it was before we passed the ordinance. That's the intention, but then we can tweak it. I mean, that's what I guess is what I'm
And what I'm saying is, to do that, we may have to rescind an ordinance and pass another ordinance that we would then have to rescind
Got
to
it,
fix
okay.
whatever. If we just rescind what we did here, I'm concerned that just leaves nothing there. It's every man for himself.
Correct me if I'm wrong. phase 1 is an ordinance, phase 2 is a resolution, right?
I'm confused
Because I
on
thought that said
this.
22,
Maybe you can look at this,
57.
Alex. We got ordinance 2833 that's really talking about, it's Exhibit A.
That's all.
I believe what
Which
Andy's saying
includes
is
phase
correct.
2, and then the resolution.
Phase 1 required an ordinance because you're creating traffic things. You're talking about where stop signs are and things like that. As I understand phase 2, what you're really just talking about is bulb outs.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
only
That's
requires a
correct.
resolution.
That's right, the stop signs
So
are
there
there.
too, yeah.
And that's the concern about rescinding the ordinance is, the ordinance, I haven't looked at it recently, but I believe it says where stop signs go. So if you pull that ordinance without doing anything else, I don't think there are any stop signs there.
And that's not what I was gonna propose. I was gonna propose leaving this item and carrying it over in committee. But alternatively, if they want to go ahead and get rid of 2, we can
That's fine.
rescind, leave
Correct.
it here and send it out also with a positive recommendation to rescind the
To rescind
resolution.
the resolution that has the
2257.
bulb out.
That's no problem.
That's what we need,
You
okay.
can do that.
We're all in agreement on that 100%, and that doesn't have any adverse effects to not
Yes,
do what we
y'all
haven't
can
done.
send out rescinding the resolution with regard to phase 2 and leave phase 1 in committee and carry that over.
What was the concern on the bulb outs? I know there were several emails, but they haven't been installed, and I guess nobody really spoke to that in
No, they
particular
did.
tonight.
They inhibited parking
Okay,
at
I
the
heard the
house.
stop sign was parking, yeah.
Yeah, the stop sign's already there today, it's just further back.
Did
Okay.
Clark
So-
work on this thing?
He did.
Yeah,
I don't think, let Cal call Clark.
yeah, that's what I think, and
Get
have
the neighbors.
have the neighbors of Cale and Clark all have a powwow,
Yeah.
and
I agree.
they let them hear the problems, and then that's his job. We paid him to do this, to solve the problem. He just needs to think it differently.
He lives right around the corner, so he.
Yeah. He walked over there.
Yeah, okay.
Gotta come get
So
him.
it's resolution 2257.
Can I just answer
Yes, ma'am.
Andrew's question? The issue with the bulb outs is they narrow the road, it comes in 5 feet on each side and each corner, and then 5 feet out and 20 feet across the front of our property. So we already have too many cars, too many kids, too much going on, it's already dangerous, hard getting in and out of driveways. And narrowing the street there just creates more confusion. The idea was to slow people down, but it actually is really gonna cause more, I think, safety issues, and then also reducing parking.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so to baseline, I would entertain a motion to rescind resolution 2257, not, and leaving basically ordinance 2833 in committee for discussion with others afterwards.
I'd make that motion.
Okay, motion by Counselor Jones.
Second.
Second by Counselor Harden. All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 4-0. Thank you all for coming and sharing the good feedback. We appreciate it. With that, there are no other items on the public safety agenda, so we are adjourned.